let me welcome Alex Wong from Bank of America. You're the last one. It's always a tricky position before the cocktail. But Alex, tell us, what is your role at BofA? Where are you located, by the way?
I'm actually Alex Wong. I'm one of the heads of product management at Bank of America. So one of my teams looks after our digital channels, our Cash Pro platform. The other team is a team of Treasury specialists that go and work with our relationship managers, our bankers, our Treasury officers, and speak to clients. So I'm very fortunate in the position that I'm now able to build things, but also I get a lot of direct client feedback on voice of the client and how, what they're looking for.
So
I've been doing that about 15 years.
Yeah, okay.
But prior to that, I had 2 years at Barclays. But prior to that, I was at Bank of America. So read into that what you will.
Okay, so you will talk about the trend in treasury management. So you will talk about liquidity management, regulation, real-time payment, ISO 20022 compliance, because it's still an issue that a lot of people try to put aside, but it's there.
Yeah.
Verification of pay, we've mentioned, and of course instant payment, because it's coming and it will be quite challenging. So
it's not coming, it's here.
Yeah, it's already there, but okay, the 9th of October, it's for us a deadline, and it will be interesting to see your view about the level of preparedness of banks in general and IT vendors, because we receive a lot of complaints from our members.
Yes,
across Europe.
That's fair. That's fair.
Okay, so you have a few slides.
I do, but I'm also very happy to
start, and maybe we can just.
So I'll use the first slide maybe just as a. Well, you've already covered that for me, thank you. So, these are talking points that we've collected and observed through conversations with clients, and I've just broken them into 3 areas and just picked the highlights. First of all, looking at the opportunities, we've already talked about real-time liquidity and instant payments, leveraging the instant payment regulation, which came into force over the weekend. So now it's mandatory for all banks that provide SEPA credit transfers to provide SEPA Instant. What's been brought out so far is real-time Treasury has implications on your processes, on the people, but also around some of the threats that might occur. So if you think about real-time Treasury, what you've got there is you've got some disparity in where the real-time capabilities lie. So if we look at APIs, a lot of treasuries are consuming transaction reporting via API, and they're getting real-time reporting. Then they've got the ability to make real-time payments now. So the question is, how do you respond to real-time information? Can you react to it, and what is your response to it? We talked about making payments. Is it about capturing an opportunity as it appears, or do you need to temper that? Do you need information to help you make that decision? So potentially, with SEPA Instant and SEPA credit transfers now, up to €1 billion, that's a very, very quick way to potentially have money leave the door unintentionally, and maybe to a bad actor. So we need to think about how you're going to be rewarded for that. And as you said before, will the banks pay you interest on your deposit on a real-time basis? It's going to be overnight. So let's think about not necessarily real-time Treasury, but on-time Treasury. And we've talked about hybrid models before. Let's make the appropriate decisions and the appropriate time space for the appropriate reward. So, that hybrid approach in terms of what needs to be real time and what can be left to actually be realized according to how you're going to be rewarded, such as deposits. We're seeing at the moment that even with a declining interest rate environment, there's still good yield on the short-term money market funds, money market deposits, just deposit accounts. So what we're finding is a lot of treasurers are thinking, well, do I want to lock in my long-term investments because I don't know where that volatility, how that volatility is shaping up and where it's going to go, where it's going to end up. So there's still that distinction and that thought around, okay, what cash do I need to have instant access to? What can I allow to build and to mature over time? But can I use, is that the right proportion of money that I'm allocating to each? And then, again, Treasury, digitization and APIs, real-time dashboards, spoken about there, API linked data. Our clients are being overwhelmed at the moment. Treasury is being overwhelmed in terms of there is a lot of data out there. What can we do with it? And we have access to it, but again, can our processes consume it quickly enough and make enough sense of it to guide us in the decisions that we need to make? And then the last opportunity was around ESG linked liquidity investments. And what we're hearing from clients is they do see that as an opportunity. They are measured on that as a KPI, but there is some reluctance and there is a decline in the proportion of clients that are actually allocating a proportion of their funds to ESG assets. So I think I read somewhere in finance papers that a year ago, 24% of organizations were looking at ESG performance. 3% are now looking at that as one of their high priorities. So it's a declining thought. However, they do think it's an opportunity. This is still important, but some other priorities are overtaking that at the moment.
Because of return, I guess.
Because of return.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you know that we, as a European Association of Corporate Treasurers, we have really advocate for extending the verification of pay to all euro payments. And I hope that soon it will be the non-euro currencies in Europe, because we still have a few of them, even if the Romanian will join soon.
Yeah.
So how do you see that? Because at the end of the day, we can rely on the banks, providing our banks will be ready very, very soon. Yeah. But what about the other currencies? So any piece of advice for treasurers? Should we organize the verification upstream at our level rather than to, let's say, leave it to the banks?
Yeah, there's a couple of thoughts on that. So even though the implementation date is the 9th of October, a lot of the PSPs who are subject to that regulation actually rolled out their capabilities over the weekend. And what we saw on Monday was a 90% participation from PSPs. So something in the order of 2,700 PSPs participating in the VOP scheme. There has been some challenges. There have been some not necessarily inaccurate responses, but there has been some lack of responses because of reachability either on the outbound or on the inbound. And what we've also got to consider is that, number one, there are some banks which are implementing it in very different ways, particularly around batch payments. Yeah. But also, there are banks who have virtual accounts. And so the regulation requires that you return the name of the physical bank, the payment account owner, which is typically the physical account owner, and then you have sub-layers of accounts, which will then return an incorrect match.
Okay, so you see some difficulties with the, let's say, multi-virtual accounts? When you have millions of customers, that could be an issue for, okay.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned the batch, or are you referring to the bulk?
A batch. So,
batch.
So
okay.
It is...
Because we have also the bulk instant, so it's...
That's right.
Okay.
So for bulk payments, there is the opportunity to opt out of the VOP check. And you might ask yourself, why would I want to do that? So the thing is, if you put in a VOP check in line with a bulk payment set, what will happen will differ according from bank to bank. a bank might say, if there's an inconsistency, I'm going to stop the whole batch. I might let some payments through, I might not let others through. So potentially you are going to disrupt your payment process, and some critical providers are not going to be particularly happy about that. And so what we've done as a bank is we've taken the opt-out and we've implemented that for all of our clients. And what that means is their payment flow from day one has not been implemented. But because we've been educating them, we've been sending targeted bulletins, they're aware that they have been opted out and they can opt back in. Now, that will be on their own time. What we've done is we've taken an offline process which allows them to do a bulk check and then to determine how they want to use those results. So they may not want to apply a negative check to a particular provider because it's a proven, it may be a proven payment run, and it's a known that there's going to be an inaccurate match.
To be honest with you, I still wonder what are the use cases for bulk instant, but it was really claimed by our German colleagues. They were insisting, and I still don't know what will come with the 10 seconds. So I guess we need more time to verify a bulk.
Well, 10 seconds isn't a lot of time, and it can be
even more complicated.
But it's interesting what you say about these real-time payments and the insistence on having them. Now that we've got pricing parity as well, what we should be seeing is some more adoption of those real-time payments, and we have seen that our clients are interested in real-time payments, but delivering them through API, but using an ISO 20022 wrapper. So that means they're paying an instant payment across an instant delivery channel, but actually they know that at the back end, that file is going to have to be stripped out and the payments are going to be treated individually. So they are going to lose that instance.
But so you are not against the idea of having upstream in your own system as a corporate a way to check your payee and to have system multi-currencies, because it's not only euro, and maybe to have use of Swift Prival, because it's also a way to clean your portfolio of counterparty, because whatever the system, we still have, let's say, all in the racket, and so it's quite important to make sure. So,
and I didn't address your original question about other countries. So, for example, you have the UK confirmation of payee scheme, almost identical to the verification of payee scheme. You have the US account validation scheme, and they're very similar. We know that in APAC they're adopting further account verification schemes, and we know schemes that are going to be implemented in Northern Europe and Eastern Europe.
But are we talking about domestic payment?
Because they are typically domestic.
Yeah, because it was a discussion we had, because it's also a question for you. What do you think about LEI? Because we have close relationship with Glyph, based in Geneva, and so we do believe that LEI could be used for more than just EMEA reporting. Because I think it's quite important to make sure that, and to consider that in Europe, the local system were working quite well. In Italy, in the Netherlands, in other countries, so Instant was already working well with their own references. But when it comes to Europe cross-border, then we need to find a common referential. And so I keep thinking that LEI is so far the best we found.
LEI is a recognized, it's a verifiable identifier. That could be the way ahead. However, with regards to cross-border identification, like API aggregators, there are providers out there who are using databases, and they're collecting together national databases, their own intelligence sources, and their own sanctions databases, for example, and using that to combine into either a multi-country capability or cross-border capability. So it's a possibility.
But countries like UK and US or some Asian countries, are there trying to implement system to check foreign currencies? Because that's when you have foreign suppliers, that's the issue. And
I don't think it's the currency that's the issue. It's the
no, but the fact that you have counterparties located outside the US, so you don't have the same referential. So do you think that LEI could be a way for Europe to push, as we did for IBAN, to standardize further? And like SEPA, it's beyond the 27 countries. That could be a way where Europe could force to try to standardize?
I think it's a great idea. Look,
Yeah.
it's verifiable, it's unique, and it's authenticated. So why not use that as a basis for that?
Okay. No, because coming to another question, we talk about ISO 20022. So again, the idea is to standardize. But when you talk to corporates, they are complaining about the lack of standardization. And even when you have standards, you know that you have different way to implement a standard. So we have different ISO 20022, let's say, implementation. So where do we stand? What is your view as a BFA and in terms of ISO? Do you think that the market is ready? I guess you are ready, but what about your customers? So
ISO 20022 has been around for many years, and it's been seen as the standard to move to. With regards to the messaging that's going around about ISO 20022, there have been deadlines that have been set, and those deadlines have been set around clearing systems. So clearing systems are migrating from legacy formats to ISO 20022, for example, CHAPS in the UK. There's messaging coming out from SWIFT around SEPA migration November 2025. That is for interbank communication, bank-to-bank communication only. However, that has not been clarified, and we are still speaking to corporates who are telling us we're not ready to be compliant for the November 2025 deadline. And we're trying to still reassure clients, corporates, you do not have any obligation to move to ISO 20022. It is all completely optional. The only time you need to think about ISO 20022 on a mandatory basis if you are already sending SWIFT, MX, or MT messages. So there is still confusion around deadlines. That said, there are definite benefits. So the benefits are more data where it needs to be, and more data that we can identify where it should be.
Yeah, so it should facilitate the reconciliation, yeah. But again, sooner or later, we will move totally to MX and not MT anymore. Because a lot of people, like the SEPA, we have the impression, yeah, but it will be postponed for a couple of years. So, you know, you push the deadline, but I think that sooner or later we'll have to...
There are many drivers. You know, for example, SAP for HANA is ISO 20022 native. There are more and more platforms which are moving to ISO 20022, including the clearing systems themselves. So at some point, you've got to realize for yourself that if you don't move to ISO 20022, you're going to miss all that information that is available. So you can either miss the opportunity with regards to receivables management, but also you miss the opportunity in providing your suppliers with more information to help their reconciliation process.
By upgrading your system, maybe you will move to a version, let's say, enabling use of... No, very interesting. And so, again, verification of pay, so you keep thinking that it will be a way to mitigate the risk of fraud we've mentioned, because we know that we have a lot of frauds caused by the fact that, okay, we can check the IBAN, but we don't necessarily check the payee. And so do you think that we can significantly mitigate the risk of fraud? So
it is one of a number of tools. Yeah. And if you think about verification of payee, if it's on every payment, that's great. But if you're sending bulk payments, then it will only check as often as you choose to check. And it's about how you maintain your vendor database as well.
Of course,
and that's not to mention push payment fraud, where it's opportunistic.
And any type, or I don't know if you have other, let's say, current trend you see in terms of cash management or trade finance, where you would like to insist on?
With regards to...
But I don't know. Other trends, we talk about the real-time payments. So where do you see...
I think one of the enduring trends right now is the need for visibility, the identification of opportunities for AI. We're having a lot of questions from treasurers as how to best engage with the AI, how best to use AI. And then there's those exploratory questions around distributed ledger technology and stablecoin. So those are the developing trends.
Yeah, stablecoin is something also we contemplate, but in the US too. But so I think it's time to close this session. So thanks a lot, Alex, for this presentation and comments.